Welcome along, guys. Well, today I'm on a bike which holds a special place in my heart. This is a 1993 CBR900 Fireblade. Everyone remembers my old Fireblade project. Well, this is the original blade, the original round eye, speed hold, beautiful Fireblade, the original, and some would argue the absolute best. Now, this is a good friend of mine, Adam's, allowed me to take his bike out for a couple of hours. It's been ages since I've even ridden a carbed bike. This is going to be fantastic. Really excited about this. Let's go. Blimey, you've got fuel taps and all sorts on this. Cut chokes. Oh, blast from the past. Stepping onto the bike, it feels a good size. You've got a nice big tank, you've got a nice big rear to the bike. Oh, let's go. We've got a beautiful day, an immaculate Fireblade. This is going to be a good one. So a bit of history of the old Blade. When these came out, these were the original hooligan, really. This was a game-changing bike. This was based on Honda's 754, which they bought out to 893cc, and they looked at the whole bike to see how they could reduce weight. This was the beauty of this machine. This wasn't the most powerful bike in its day. It was about 120 horsepower. There were bikes with more power, but this was the first time that weight was really considered on a mass-produced bike. So the Fireblade went through several iterations in its time. This is the original. They came out in 92. I think this is a 93 model. They more or less changed. They changed again in 96. It had a fox eye front headlight. And then in 98, the whole thing was softened up a little bit. A bit less aggressive, a bit more comfortable. Almost like a bit of a sports tourer, the Blade became. And that's the version I had, the 1998 version. The next model from that was the 929 version, where they upped the capacity slightly, overhauled the styling completely. That version was never that popular and only stayed around for a couple of years. That seems incredible now, but every 2 years there'd be a new version of the Blade come out. The 943, was it 944? Was it the 944 version? That was supposed to be the best Blade. That is one I've yet to try. So if anyone's got a nice 954 version of the Blade, I'd love to try one of those too. That's when it went, well, the 929 is when it went fuel injection, and then after the 954, the 1000 came in. So, but this is that original carved 1992 hooligan. Suspension is firm. This one's got the Öhlins aftermarket rear shock on it, and it's also got some Öhlins front springs just to improve the dampening slightly. It's actually very well damped. What Adam has done on this, he's actually geared it down one at the front and he's gone two up on the rear. So he's really given this bike some bottom end pull. Oh, listen to that burble. Can you hear that? This has got the full Acura headers and an Austin Racing end can on it. It sounds beautiful. It sounds as nice as any other bike you can buy today, if not perhaps a little bit better. This bike is not built to meet any type of Euro regulations. The setup of this thing is just all about performance. Oh, it's quick! It's not slow! With that gearing, it's got bags and bags of torque for overtaking. Again, exactly what you need for a road bike. Oh yeah. It's quite hard work because there's so much weight on your wrists. It does require a bit of concentration. How old is this now? 30 years old? 30 years old, more or less. It's incredible. It's incredible how close this really is to a modern bike. It's not as easy to ride, perhaps, as a modern bike. I think it's definitely... Oh, front gets nice and light. It's definitely one you've got to concentrate on. It feels quite long. Changes direction nice. It's stable. Probably because of the weight. I mean, it's 205 kilos, 180 kilos dry. Throttle connection is instant. There's none of that ride-by-wire delay you would get on a modern bike. It takes a little bit of effort to tip it in. Perhaps a little bit more than a modern bike would. I think it's quite a long, it feels like it's quite a long wheelbase. Makes it a little bit slower to turn maybe, even with that 16-inch front wheel. These are actually becoming a little bit sought after these days. The prices are still reasonable. If you're looking to get a future classic, I mean the Blade will be a future classic. Prices are starting to creep up now. But the good news is there were so many bought, there's so many about back in the day that you can still, there's still a lot out there second hand to purchase. So if you're looking for you know, a bit of a project, bit of a restoration project, a potential future classic which is still affordable at the moment, you won't go far wrong than picking up one of these. I really don't think so. In any of the guises probably. Probably the 929 is the least desirable version. You have to excuse my Insta360, the marks on the camera. It fell off the bike, fell off the H2 the other day and got scratched a buggery, so I'm just seeing if it's usable or not, the footage from it, so apologies for bloody hell, that was an eagle, nearly on the visor. Let's give it a little bit, let's open it up. Let's see exactly what she's got. It's quick. It's still quick. I'd say it's sort of, what would I compare that performance to? A bit like a ZX6R performance, I would say, if you're going to compare it to something modern. ZX6R performance, that is. It's quite linear. It's, you know, it's got a lot of mid-range. It doesn't sort of jump. It doesn't sort of hit a power band then take off. It's quite a linear power delivery. But I'd say that feels sort of like ZX6R performance there. More than enough for the street. There's a lovely feel to the front brake. You can just put a little bit of load on it, carry it into the corner, open her up. It's a little bit flat in the mid-range and it picks up about 5.5. You know, that's probably a fueling related issue. You could probably pick up a bit more in that mid-range if you wanted another dyno session. But that's the trouble, you know, dynoing one of these, you've got to take the carbs off, you've got to change the jets. There's no power commander, it's not electronic. You've not injected where you can just add a bit more fuel with your power commander. You're taking the tank off, you're stripping it down. It's a lot of work to get a carb bike. Fueling absolutely spot on. This is probably, I'd say, 95% of the way there. It's pretty good. A tiny bit buzzy through the foot pegs, but not excessive. A little bit on the handlebars, but no worse than the new GSX-R or S1000RR, for example. All in all, if I were to shut my eyes, which I don't recommend, I wouldn't know I was riding a 30-year-old motorcycle. It's amazing. It is incredible when you think 30 years of development between this. I'm looking forward to trying the new blade and how does it compare. Maybe do a back-to-back with the new blade versus this original. That could be quite an interesting video. But honestly, you wouldn't believe this is 30 years old. Incredible. I'm getting a little bit of discomfort in my sort of hip area now. The wrists aren't too bad yet. It's mainly sort of the hips a little bit of feeling it. It is certainly more uncomfortable than a modern sports bike, and slightly more uncomfortable than the H2, I think, and that isn't particularly comfortable. But this bike was built for one purpose, and that has to be the quickest and the best. Right, let's pull in the pub and have a quick little walk around. Lovely. Well, there she is. Absolutely beautiful in a gloss black. It's all been repainted. It's not standard, any of the paint on this. You know, over the 10 or so years, 10 years? He's had it longer than that, 15 years or so that Adam has had it. He's repainted the whole bike. He's actually a painter. It's actually Adam who did the powder coating on my Hypermotard swinging arm and stuff. So he knows his way around a paintbrush or paint can. But she is beautiful. I mean, classic features of this bike was, of course, the twin headlights, the speed holes. Look at that, speed holes and everything. That was sort of the key styling points of this. The unmistakable blade styling cues. The 16-inch front wheel, and this has got the Bridgestone Battle Axe BT16s on, which I think is probably the best tyre you can still buy in a 16-inch fitment. That is the issue with the 16-inch. I think it works. It's a great idea. Reduce weight by reducing the size of the wheel, but if tyre manufacturers don't support it, then you're in problems. And obviously the latest stickiest rubber just isn't available in a 16-inch anymore. This is why a lot of people have gone to a 17-inch now. This one has the full Klopovich system, and then a little Austin Racing end can on the end. Look at the size of that tail unit. This was back in the days when you could actually take your sandwiches out with you. Be perfect for this day and age. You could get my flask of coffee and my sandwiches in there. A bit of storage on a sports bike, that is just unheard of these days. This is a 17-litre tank, but it looks massive. Nowadays they build the weight of the fuel down into the bike, so this would have gone down and been down here, the fuel mainly on a modern bike. But back in the 90s the fuel was sat really on top of the bike. So that's a sort of a big change really with older bikes compared to modern stuff. They did this central mass centralisation, I think they used to call it, what they call it, where everything is brought, all the weight is brought to the centre of the bike. This is old-fashioned. The weight of the fuel is sat up nice and high. Well, there you go guys, the original CBR900RR, and even today it still looks bloody good. She sounds beautiful. So lively. Because of that gearing change, can't recommend it enough. Gearing your bike down a bit so it makes a bit more punch. Really makes a big difference. That one down, two up on the back on this has really livened it up. It handles incredibly well for a 30-year-old machine. It feels a little bit long by today's standards. There's a little bit getting used to. The front end feel perhaps doesn't, how much room do you want to give? Front end feel perhaps not as good as a modern bike, but it still absolutely performs. It's got everything you need. Lovely brake feel, predictable chassis. And this was the handling bike in its day. Still absolutely fantastic. Massive thanks to my mate Adam for letting me have a go on his Pride and Joy, and this is his Pride and Joy. So I feel incredibly privileged to be allowed on this. So massive thanks Adam, you're a star mate, really appreciate it. So there we go guys, little look at the amazingly fantastic CBR900. I've actually really I'm considering buying a classic bike, and I think one of these is potentially a good investment, because there were so many of these bought back in the day. There's still a fair few examples around, and they have started to go up in value. So if you buy one of these, I think they range between £2,500 and £6,000 for one of these now. So, you know, affordable, that's only going to go in that direction. They're not going to come down. So if you get something like this, you can have it as your ride. I mean, this is perfectly fine as your ride, as your weekend plaything. It's fast enough, it's comfortable enough, it's reliable enough. I mean, these engines are bulletproof. It's a Honda. This could really be an investment for the future. Buy one of these, tinker with it a little bit. It's probably going to need a little bit of work doing to it. These are such a simple bike. There's no electronics to worry about. Everything is very, very easy to work on. There's plenty of room to access everything. It's not like a modern bike where everything is just crammed into such a tiny space. You've got room to work on one of these. CBR900, I think, they're going to start doing that very, very soon, because this bike is an icon. There's not many icons out there which are still affordable. Get one quick.